Sue, is that feedback coming from you?
I think
Definitely is.
Okay, hold on, let me. Okay, that should be better.
Much better, yes.
Okay, good.
And you should be set as the interpreter.
Okay, and I'm assuming that I just am because I don't really see anything that tells me.
Can somebody let David, change David to a panelist, please? Sorry, Sue.
No problem. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. I was having trouble getting my computer to wake up.
So I am going to stop sharing for a second so I can see everybody. Good morning, attendees. Sue, I'm going to, again, make you the interpreter because it says that you have not arrived yet.
I'm here, really.
Okay, now it's we should be good then. Okay. Okay, now, hello, welcome. Welcome everyone to the Arts and Culture Accessibility Cooperative IDEA Awards. The presentation will begin any second now, and just giving people a few more seconds to enter the room. And while we wait, let's go through just a couple things. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send out the recording to everyone that has registered along with a list of resources. That will probably be Thursday or Friday before that happens, but it's coming. You can use the question and answer button to submit questions for this webinar. Also, once the presentations are finished, you will also be able to raise your hand and we'll turn the mics on for you. Closed captions are available via the little CC button on your screen. It is real-time communication access, real-time translation today. Also, live audio description is available by clicking the interpretation button and selecting audio description. So that should be on your toolbar near your closed caption button should also be audio description. It looks like a globe and says interpretation. Also, you will note that chat to everyone has been disabled. You can still chat to the panelists or to the host, but you can't chat with everyone. That's an accessibility issue for those of you that don't know. People that use screen readers, some of those screen readers actually read out the chat to them. So if you're chatting while someone is presenting, they hear both things and it's kind of annoying. So also, we want you to please fill out some feedback. There'll be a survey that'll be sent to you directly after the Zoom, and then also with the resources that's going to come out. So there you go. So this is very exciting. It's our first ACAC of 2021, and this is our first IDEA Awards. Sue, do you need help before we keep moving? You're muted. I can't hear you, Sue. You're muted. So
attendees can hear Sue.
What?
Attendees using the audio description feature can hear Sue now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. All right, so the IDEA Awards. This is so exciting. These awards recognize institutions and individuals who made outstanding contributions to the inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility of the greater St. Louis cultural landscape in 2020. The 4 IDEA Award winners for 2020 are Dance the Vote, the Arts and Education Council, St. Louis Shakespeare Festival, and Jenna McNeil, the lead visitor engagement supervisor at the Missouri History Museum. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to introduce them. Arts and Education Council is going to go first. I'll do an introduction, and then each award winner will give us a little presentation. And then afterwards, there'll be lots of time for Q&A, so get your questions ready. So the Arts and Education Council believes the arts are critical to shaping a more vibrant region for all. Since 1963, they have kept art happening across the bi-state region through a variety of programs and grants with the goal of ensuring our region is rich with arts and cultural experiences. To support a full creative life for all, the Arts and Education Council commits to championing policies and practices of cultural equity that empower a just, inclusive, and equitable and accessible region. So I want to introduce Cynthia. Take it away.
First of all, I don't know if everyone can see this spectacularly beautiful award that was custom made by the Makerspace, I understand, on Del Mar, and we're just thrilled. I mean, we usually give out the awards. We don't usually receive them, and so we're so grateful to Mind's Eye and the Arts and Cultural Accessibility Committee for recognizing the work that we do. I do recall when I first met Jason Frazier, he called, and I have to say that I think it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago, and wanted to talk to us about this program for transcribing, audio transcription services for performances. And we met, and the more I learned about it and the impact that it could have, we immediately signed on and helped fund the purchase of the equipment and sort of made some introductions to him around town. And we just couldn't have been more pleased with how far that program has gone and the impact that it's made. So that was really our first introduction into the wonderful work that Mind's Eye does. And I know through the years we've helped them with some fundraising campaigns. We also have awarded them some diversity grants, and right now we're in the thick of our Arts and Healing Initiative, which is new for us. It just launched this summer in the middle of the pandemic, and through this this grant program in partnership with the Missouri Foundation for Health, we've been really able to expand our accessibility desires for our community. But I think without this, the first intersection we had with Jason and Mind's Eye, I don't know that we would have been fully aware of the impact that this partnership could have. So, we're very, very realistic for 2021 when it comes to the arts and culture sector, and that the sector has just been really decimated by the pandemic. But what we've also seen that we're really excited about moving into 2021 is a lot of our organizations have pivoted, and they're doing more programs virtually, and you'll hear more from Shakespeare Festival, which I think has just done an incredible job over the summer and through the winter of creating arts experiences that all people can enjoy. And so we're really excited about this, and it's going to play a big role in 2021 in our funding opportunities, because what we've learned is the virtual environment really does make it more accessible for a wider group of people to enjoy the arts. So again, I just want to really thank Mind's Eye for this recognition. It was completely surprising to us, but we were just thrilled. And I have to say, coming out of 2020, getting this notice from Jason a week ago or so just actually made our year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. We're so glad to have you and to have everything that the Arts and Education Council does. So we're glad to have you. I'm sorry. So next we want to move on to Jenna McNeil. Jenna McNeil has been advancing accessibility at the Missouri History Museum for years as the lead visitor engagement supervisor. She proposed the museum's recently completed nursery and sensory friendly room and continues to monitor its use and success. She also develops and executes the museum's complimentary wheelchairs, accessibility training, and also the maintenance for the wheelchairs. Jenna enjoys personally welcoming groups of adults with developmental disabilities who visit the museum with their care facilities. So we are so glad to have you. And you can go ahead, Jenna.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know if you were done talking. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This to me was definitely a shocker. Not that I don't feel like I deserve it, but I just come in and I do my job every single day, and it's nothing that I feel like I needed to be rewarded for. But again, I am so I was shocked, but I am so pleased and so honored to receive this award. Just to kind of give you all a little bit of history of me and the Historical Society. So I've been here for about 9 years, and I started off as part-time. I worked my way up the ladder, and now I'm the lead supervisor for the department. So I've seen a lot of faces, a lot of people of different backgrounds, different cultures come into the museum, but it also gave me the insight to what was really needed, what the visitors wanted. And so every day, like I said, I come in, one thing that I do is I make everybody feel everyone feel welcomed, no matter disability or ability. Everyone's the same for me. Again, to kind of talk about the needs that I saw that the visitors wanted. When I became a mom, one thing that I realized is that we had a lot of moms that would come into the museum, and we didn't have a designated area for them to nurse. And me being a first-time mom, I knew how important that was for me everywhere I went, you know, and it was a struggle trying to find, you know, sometimes those secluded areas. But here at the museum, I like everyone to kind of come here and already have what they need. I don't want people to come here and have to, you know, feel out of place because they don't necessarily have the necessities that they need to enjoy their visit. So the idea came about 2 years ago, and thanks to Sarah Sims, who helped me execute it, was to have a designated area for mothers to nurse in private, but then also it was the idea to have it as a dual purpose room to also serve families or individuals with sensory needs. So that was just really important to me because we do have a lot of people that come in, like I said, with all different abilities. And one thing that I noticed is sometimes we didn't always have the right tools for them. And so again, I just wanted everyone who came into the museum to find a piece of themselves here when they came to basically to be able to enjoy their experience no matter what. And then also with our wheelchairs, that's something that, like I said, I've been here for a very long time. And sometimes equipment can go out of style or, you know, just the wear and tear. And so again, I wanted to make sure that when we do have visitors that came into the museum that again needed those specific tools in order to enjoy their visit, they could do so in a proper way. So I actually reached out to a company called Therapeutic Specialties, and they were able to repair all of our wheelchairs for in exchange for a membership to our museum. So that was awesome. I want to give them a big shout out and thank you for everything that they did. But also, I have an amazing team. I don't do all of this by myself. So I want to give a huge shout out to the visitor engagement navigators. Thank you all for always being willing to train and being the frontline amazing people that you are as well. But again, my main mission when I come in every day is just to make sure that everyone feels like this is home in a sense. I do monitor and make sure that the sensory room and our wheelchairs are always up to date again, so everyone who comes in, they already have what they need, you know. And again, I just want to thank you all for this opportunity. I just came back from quarantine and I just opened up my award, so I do want to show it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I am looking forward to continuing my work here at the museum. I'm always looking for new ways to grow and new accessibility opportunities. I am on our accessibility committee here. So I do work with a team here at the museum who's awesome. And again, our main focus is to always make sure that when people visit our museum, they can find themselves here. So thank you all again so much, and congratulations to everybody.
Thank you, Jenna. That was awesome. I'm glad that you were able to come back to that award. And if you guys haven't been if you haven't checked out that sensory friendly room, even if you don't need it for any reason, you should really check it out. It's just a cool addition to the museum. So next we're gonna go over to Dance the Vote. Founded by theater artist and social activist Joan Lipkin and co-produced by Ashley L. Tate, Dance the Vote is a nonpartisan organization that promotes voter advocacy and registration through performance, video, graphics, and other arts-related channels and civic engagement. In 2020, they featured choreographers of color and companies that focus on dancers with disabilities, including Full Radius and Heidi Lasky Dance. The videos were packaged into weekly episodes and viewed over 50,000 times in the fall of 2020. So we have Joan Lipkin is presenting for Dance the Vote today. Hi, Joan. You just take it away.
How about this amazing award? Wow. I mean, it's just really beautiful. Can everyone who is a hearing person hear me okay? Yes? Okay, I want to thank you, Mind's Eye. We are really honored to get this award, and it's really thrilling for us to get this award along with our friends and colleagues at the History Museum and the Arts and Education Council and the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival. But I just want to take a moment and acknowledge you, Mind's Eye, for the incredible work that you are doing around inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And I also want to take a moment and mention just a few of the core members of our team. That would mean every dancer who's performed, that's a lot. But I do want to thank Becky Galambos and Ashley Tate, Sabrina Tayus, Jennifer Medina, and Tausig Dan Kelly, and our webmasters, Carmen Garcia and Julie George. And of course, our interns who work with us on the project. I always see an award as for everybody, the people who make things, the people who attend them, the people who fund it. So this is really for all of us. I'm gonna ask Megan to share some photos as I talk and talk a little bit about our work with people with disabilities on various projects, just to give you some context. So I have long been involved with disability and performance. In 1995, with the late occupational therapist, Fran Cohn, we founded the Disability Project. And can we go ahead and show those? There we go. This is the group that started Dance the Vote. And we founded the Disability Project to create and make work about the culture of disability as both entertainment and advocacy. And we can go ahead and just, as it makes sense to you, just sort of share some of these pictures. Thank you, Megan. We have performed, the Disability Project has performed for over 100,000 people. We've advised other artists internationally. We're part of the permanent collection at the Missouri History Museum. We're also in the process of editing a collection of scripts developed by the project, and we hope to make these available to the public for free and at very low cost. Thankfully, through the efforts of many organizations, including Mind's Eye and my colleagues who are being honored today, The world is becoming more aware of disability as part of the cycle of life. 1 in 4 adults in the US have some form of disability. There are 61 million of us in the US and many worldwide. And most people are temporarily able-bodied because through aging or illness or accidents, our status can change. Disability is an experience that cuts across all categories of identity. So when we started Dance the Vote, it was given that disability would be part of that thinking. Dance the Vote began in 2018 when I noticed many artist colleagues felt disenfranchised and disconnected from the electoral process, even though voting is our most precious right. And I wondered if dance could be a way for them to engage and also promote voter registration. So I founded Dance the Vote with a racially mixed intergenerational core group of women who you saw in that photo of the 4 of us, and including Sabrina Tayus, who I call her the queen of voter registration. And I asked what they thought about the idea of creating dance to promote voting. And thankfully they were interested. And so our very first performance was 4 years ago for a few dozen people on a rainy afternoon outside my friend Tom Ray's iconic music store Vintage Vinyl in the Loop. By 2018, we attracted 1,100 people. Here we are at the History Museum for our free event. The mayor of St. Louis declared it Dance the Vote official voter registration day. We were covered by every TV station in the area because they said that we offered a creative, welcoming, and nonpartisan way to talk about voting. And we were on a roll with plans to go to several college campuses, streets and public parks when the pandemic hit. And like so many of my colleagues, as Cynthia mentioned, we needed to pivot to virtual formats. I love this photo. That took place at the History Museum. So when George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were killed, we decided to center the work of choreographers of color and to commission people to create work about voting or issues that might compel someone to vote. We packaged the videos into weekly episodes and included information on how to check voter registration, how to register online. We also included essential phone numbers for the National Voter Protection Hotline in case people had issues at the polls, and many people did. Over 2,000 things were reported in Missouri. So we also created a number of videos ourselves. And one of the first ones we did, we hired talented out of work actors in St. Louis. We went on to make a video on voting that featured people with disabilities. And we translated that also into Spanish because language can be an issue of accessibility. Our work was picked up by an independent producer in New York, and it was featured on a national broadcast about voting that was produced by Global Citizen and seen on CBS and multiple channels. And then with Webster University, we also created a contest for college students to create art in various media called Make Good Trouble, Why John Lewis Inspires Me to Vote. And as you can see on these last 2 images that are on the screen right now, if you are a person who is sighted, if not, somebody will be describing that for you. We participated in national grassroots nonpartisan efforts to write postcards promoting voting in Georgia. And we made a music video that went viral with Vintage Vinyl. So this is where we are now. And this is kind of where I want to focus for just a moment. 161 million Americans voted in the 2020 presidential election. It was the largest turnout in US presidential history. But given that there are 239.2 million eligible voters, we still have much to do. I think we made a difference because people tell us that we did. I know that we registered a lot of people to vote, and a lot of people told us that they were going to vote, even though there were a lot of obstacles. So our work continues. And what you're looking at right now is what we're working on now. We're focused on the HR 1 for the People Act to protect all voting rights. We're trying to help people understand that the mayoral election. The primary is March 2nd, and how they can register. We're really about providing information, but in ways that welcome people to be involved. So I'm going to ask Megan if she would just show a few more images, just to give you a little bit more of an idea as we wrap up. Megan, can you please show us the video?
Yep, just give me a second here to get the right screen going, and wonderful. I sure will.
And Dan Kelly assembled this for us. This is just a little smattering to give you a sense. It's a real mashup, a real quilt, but you'll get a sense, I think, if you can. And it's also going to be audio described for people who need that.
We all count. Así es que hágase contar.
Fill it out.
I'm Naomi. I'm blind and I can't wait to vote.
My disability is a proud part of my identity, and I am thrilled and committed to exercising my precious right to vote.
Es tan feroz, voto vos, poder es tan feroz.
Just remember to send your ballot at least a week before it's due.
Because there can be delays in the postal system.
Right. If it comes in late, your vote won't count.
And when you consider what some people have gone through for our right to vote, being beaten, imprisoned, and some even giving their lives, this is not just a right. This is our sacred responsibility. So vote.
Vote. Vote.
Get out and vote.
Vote.
Vote for yourself and your community.
Vote.
And vote.
Okay, so I just want to say thank you Thank you so much. I just want to say in conclusion that the arts and accessibility and voting are for everyone. And so that is our mission as we go forward. And if you want to see any of our 9 episodes, 23 different dance groups, some of our art, etc., just look on our Dance the Vote website, which I know Megan will also send those resources. This is really a great honor, and I share it with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joan. I also want to say that I will, in addition to, I'll send out this video when I send out the resources. I'll also send a link directly to the Dance the Vote YouTube page that has all the episodes on it. And I'm glad that you got your award, Joe, and I'm glad to see that you had it in your hand. And I was going to mention this later, but I'll mention it now since you have it in your hand so everybody knows those awards light up also. So, which I think is pretty darn cool. So
there we go.
All right, cool. So last and certainly not least is the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival. The St. Louis Shakespeare Festival is committed to fostering community and joy across the St. Louis region in the Shakespearean tradition of art for all. The festival hopes to create theater experiences that are welcoming to all individuals. And today we have with us Tori and Tom, and they're both going to share a little bit about Shakespeare Festival. Take it away, guys.
Yeah, this light up feature is amazing. I had no idea. You know, we get a lot of really great awards, but kudos to you all. This just might be the coolest and best looking thing that we now have on our shelves. Yeah, first of all, we have to thank Mind's Eye for centering this work. I mean, it really feels like if any organization in St. Louis deserves to be celebrated and recognized for its commitment to diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility, it's you all. But it's obviously extremely generous of you to recognize all of us and how inspiring it is to hear more about the work of all our colleagues at A&E and Dance the Vote and the Historical Society. So obviously we are, like everyone, I think we're incredibly surprised and incredibly honored to be recognized for the things that we have been trying to do. It certainly feels to all of us at the Shakespeare Festival that this is the great work of our time, and it's going to take all of us encouraging and celebrating and holding each other accountable to dismantling all of the structures of racism and patriarchy and ableism that keep us from living up to our values as a society and as a community, you know, particularly in the arts and in the cultural community. The festival has certainly always held very dear commitments to diversity and inclusion, but I think like all of us, recently over the summer, we had to take a closer look and recognize how much work we still have to do and how far that we still have to go. And so we have certainly been doing all we can to rededicate ourselves to our professed beliefs. And we believe that the arts and, you know, especially theater and especially Shakespeare have a really important and powerful role to play in a society, because we are the ones that can help our neighbors and our fellows imagine different worlds and different possibilities and different ways of being. So again, we've been incredibly inspired here this morning, and we've been inspired for a very long time by all the work that Mind's Eye is doing. And so I just wanted to turn it over now to Tori Rezek, who is our development manager, whose title does not even begin to encompass the work that she does for the festival, in addition to a lot of the creative programming ideas that we've been able to roll out over the last 6 to 9 months. Tori has also been very much in the front on all of our work around diversity and inclusion, equity and accessibility. So she's going to share a little bit more about what the festival has been up to of late. Tori?
Thanks, Tom. Yes, so we at the festival, of course, have a history of including ASL interpretation and audio description in our performances in Forest Park. We did set out to do that for 2020 for our park performance. Of course, 2020 did not quite go to plan. So this spring, actually our journey began in pivoting our programming. We traditionally do a school tour every spring that visits schools throughout rural Missouri and the metro. We were touring Cymbeline, and we were lucky enough to do 7 live performances before COVID hit. We did have the opportunity to produce a professional audio recording of that performance, and then we shared it online for audiences who actually joined us from the world over. We actually partnered with Mind's-Eye at that time to produce an audio described version of that performance, which was also viewed by thousands. So we were, that really began our partnership with Mind's-Eye that continued through our adapted programming for the rest of 2020. Our next pivot was when we discovered that Shakespeare in the Park was not going to be possible due to COVID. We pivoted again to produce A Late Summer Night's Stroll, which was an adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream. If you were in Forest Park at all this summer, you probably saw the 14 large archways that dotted Forest Park. In the evenings, we had live performance pieces where we partnered with lots of other arts organizations, including the Black Rep. Some of our squadron, Shakespeare Squadron education students were involved. We had dancers, we had jazz, we had some clowning. So we collaborated with lots of arts organizations to do a live evening performance. We were also lucky enough to partner with Mind's-Eye again to produce an audio described version of both the live performance and a description of the painted archways. Each of these archways were painted by individual artists through a collaboration with Painted Black STL. Painted Black STL had done a number of murals during the Black Lives Matter protests over the summer. So we partnered with them to bring on 14 individual artists who each painted these archways. And Mind's-Eye did a beautiful job of describing these some very literal interpretations of A Midsummer Night's Dream, some very abstract. So we were able to bring that full production to folks who needed audio description as well. Then our final piece of this summer, or excuse me, of 2020 was A Walking Christmas Carol in the Central West End. We partnered with the Central West End CID. Painted Black, again, was a huge partner in this project. And we also partnered with the Q Brothers, a collaboration out of Chicago, to produce an immersive audio and visual experience that interpreted Dickens' A Christmas Carol in a more modern lens. So we took over 15 local business windows in the Central West End and filled those with both 3D interpretations and 2D paintings that depicted A Christmas Carol across the streets. Again, we partnered with Mind's-Eye to bring an audio description version to the audio piece of that experience. So you could listen to the Q Brothers musical adaptation of A Christmas Carol. You could see the visual interpretation from Painted Black artists, and you could also hear those works described by Mind's-Eye. So I do want to give a huge shout out to Mind's-Eye and specifically to Megan, who walked a lot of routes with me over the summer and the winter to figure out how we were going to do this. Megan was a huge, huge collaborator in making these audio descriptions possible, and her flexibility in doing these strange pivots for performance. I hugely appreciate the collaboration that she had with us. So finally, I would like to say thank you again to both Mind's-Eye and ACAC. The collaboration with all of these arts organizations and cultural organizations really has helped the festival think about how we are making our work accessible, thinking about how we can change what we're doing. And as we end up in lots of different unique venues and locations, working to make all of those performances accessible to everyone. So thank you again to ACAC, Mind's-Eye, and congratulations to all the other awardees this morning.
Thank you, Tori. And I just want to say that I have used that experience with Shakespeare Festival in so many examples of so many different things. I was doing an audio description training just last month, and I looked on the screen, and every sample that I had given, they were all St. Louis Shakespeare Festival. So it was really a learning experience for us, just like the whole world having these learning experiences during the pandemic. It really, all of those different types of performances were really eye-opening for us. So now everyone has presented. What we'd like to do is, if the panelists, you want to turn your cameras back on, feel free. We want to open it up for questions. So if attendees want to raise their hands to ask questions, please feel free, or you can put a question in the Q&A box. Or if anybody has anything, just let me know. It will take a second to get through the Q&A box and the panelist window here. So if we don't call on you right away, just give us a second. And if Angela and Laura, you can also keep an eye on those boxes, that would be helpful for me also. Also, I wanted to throw out again about those awards. I think somebody mentioned it. I wanted to mention it. They're from Made STL. They were custom made specifically for us for these awards. I sent this terrible little sketch literally I took a picture and it was just a light bulb and just said, what can you do with this? And they came up with these beautiful awards. We were really adamant that we wanted to have tactile features on it. So the light bulb shape, you can trace your finger around to feel the light bulb shape. And there's Braille at the bottom. And the Braille says ACAC IDEA Awards 2020. So a big shout out to Made STL. So if you have any just even random vague ideas, you can send them to them and they will come up with something beautiful, because my idea was very, very thin. And Laura, can you turn the videos back on for everybody else, all the panelists? I think they're having some issues with their videos again. So questions, comments? Thank you, Laura. Wow, we got a quiet bunch today in questions. Well, okay, I'll start with a question. Now that you all are familiar with each other, I know there are lots of other groups. There are so many other institutions and venues and people and initiatives out there and funders, and there were all these other great places to choose. And we would have loved to give awards to everyone, but then it wouldn't make it quite as special, would it? But I kind of want to know if there are other places that are inspiring you or your organizations where you're getting these ideas from, or if it's all kind of just happens organically, or if anybody has any answers for that. If it's all just accessibility is on your mind. And I do want to point out, even though the ACAC is, we really focus a lot on accessibility. We're keeping in mind all of these IDEA points: inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And Joan's got a question here. Oh, go ahead, Joan.
Yeah, actually, I was going to respond to the first point, and I do have a question. But yeah, I mean, I've been thinking obviously about disability for a really long time. We did our first disability work 25 years ago. But what interests me and what's important and exciting to me about the moment that we're in is people's growing awareness of intersectionality and growing awareness that we need to be looking at accessibility. We also need to be looking at racial equity and gender equity and economic access. Economic access is going to become increasingly important. So it's a fraught moment, right, that we're in politically and with the pandemic, but at the same time, it's a moment of great opportunity. It thrills me to have people talk about racial equity at our cultural institutions, even to use language like white supremacy, and to even hear that coming out of the administration now. because we must change things. And when a lot of times when people think about disability, you know, we would look at things and it would be mostly white representation when we were working for many years. It's like, no, all kinds of people experience disability. So I think that this is about our being really conscious and asking ourselves all the time, what are the lenses that we, if we are looking, if we're visually looking, or if we're experiencing, what are the, see how the language is very ableist that we use, right? What are the experiences that we have that really sort of privilege certain categories of identity? Things must be racially inclusive, and accessibility is really important. So my question was, how can we make accessibility a priority for more places, right? Institutions, theaters. We've made performances before that weren't signed. I feel badly about that if I look at our history of certain kinds of work. I think that economic access to resources to promote accessibility is really challenging, but it's important. And so I think it's important that we talk with our funders and foundations and help them to understand that we need that to be part of the programming and not an add-on, but something that is there from the beginning as we discuss things. Is that making sense, my fellow panelists?
That makes a lot of sense, Joan. I'm just listening to you talk and I'm just tingling because I'm like, yes, Joan, yes, yes, yes. One thing that I think that we could do is, and you just kind of mentioned this, is be vocal about it. I think a lot of the times that, you know, per se, if you're not the one with the disability, maybe it's not on your brain, you know, and I think for a lot of people, they're just not as aware as they need to be. But I think us talking about it, no matter where you go, you know, if you're visiting other institutions, maybe even ask them, hey, do you provide this? Or if we have resources that we could give other institutions, I think that would be great too. And listening to you talk, it kind of just sparked an idea that came across my mind a couple of months ago. We were doing an emergency tour around the building just so people can know where the emergency exits were. And as we're doing this tour, I just kept thinking about, well, what if I was a person in a wheelchair? Or what if I was a person on crutches? Or, you know, this wouldn't work for me. So we would need to, you know, alter the way that we go down this hallway in a way, or we would need to figure out another way to get down the steps, or, you know, but I don't think a lot of people have had to think about it as much. I also think that, like I said, we just have to keep talking about it, bringing that awareness to a lot of these other institutions. It does make me proud when I go out to different institutions and I see different accessibility features and I'm like, that would be so cool, you know? So when I am out, I do look for certain things that we might not have here at the museum and bring that to like our accessibility team or our accessibility director. So that is one thing that I think that we could do. A lot of that is word to mouth, but I mean, it's a start, you know?
Yeah, we have some questions in the Q&A now, so everybody get ready. If you're not an executive director, how do you get buy-in from your organization for your accessibility efforts? This is a big one. This is a big one. So anybody have any thoughts on that?
I usually work in fundraising. It's my usual day-to-day job. I think both Joan and Jenna have made a good point is, you know, speak up. I worked when I started at the Shakespeare Festival, I was working with Adam Flores, who's also part of ACAC. That's how I got into these meetings. But as we began planning for our originally planned 2020 season, we were both just thinking a lot about what we had heard at the ACAC meetings and how we could incorporate what we were learning there into our usual festival business. And as we pivoted for the reality of 2020, just making sure that those plans were still somehow incorporated, that it was still kind of in the backs of our minds, but it was really just a matter of hey, I think we need to do this. We usually provide this service during our programming. We need to include a plan to do it with the pivot as well. So making noise, in my case at least.
I will say that when I first presented the idea for the, first it was just a nursing room. It wasn't going to be a dual purpose room. I did not get buy-in right away. And it just kind of was one of those ideas that I thought was really, really great. But as I'm trying to make the case, it just kind of fell on deaf ears for about a year. And then when Sarah came aboard, I just continued to do different research, and I just kind of was thinking about, well, how can I get buy-in? What more could I present? And that's when I came up with the idea of making it a dual purpose room. Not only are we going to serve just one type of community, which would be the moms, but we're also going to serve a whole different type of community if we actually introduce the idea of a sensory friendly space. We do have a children's exhibit here, and I know that, even if you don't necessarily have sensory things that you would need, just having a quiet space. Me being a mom, I just know that there were times where I needed a space to take my child, when we're in a public area, so I just kind of figured out, well, what more could this room serve as? So I think sometimes if you need buy-in, exhaust all of your ideas to maybe combine them in one if you can. I know that's not always easy to do, but beef it up a lot. Like I said, my idea initially just kind of fell on deaf ears. So I just kind of went back to the drawing board. And then also pay attention to your audience. It's not necessarily, it was for me at the time, because like I said, I was a mom, but also I knew what the audience needed. I worked directly with the frontline staff. So I'm the person that could say, hey, I've seen this 6 times this week. I think this would be awesome if we did this, but pay attention to your audience. I think buy-in is going to come from the need, and you just have to make sure that you explain what that need is and just help them see why it's important.
Yeah, I think those are all great. I love beef it up. Just beef it up. So another question, are any of the panelists concerned that in the post-COVID relief and rush to return to quote unquote normal, this accessibility progress will be lost? What can we do to prevent that? I would say on a personal, yes. Yes, we are concerned that that will be lost. I can say for Mind's Eye, even as an organization that focuses on people who are blind or visually impaired, during this pandemic, we have grown actually because we started doing the very first thing we did with Cymbeline, with Shakespeare Festival, where we thought we got to figure something out because all the theaters are closed and I'm not going to have a job, basically, if there's nothing to audio describe. So for us, we expanded and we will never go back to not doing virtual audio description. Once we have it, once we're learn how to do it and we have the software and we have this and we have that, there's no reason not to, but that does concern me for a lot of organizations.
I'll speak up here as a funder. We're actually baking into our 2021 grant opportunities a layer that includes funding in the virtual environment. I think that what we've seen over 2020, the virtual productions and performances, they've improved as people get more familiar with the technology. I believe that the technology keeps getting more affordable for organizations. And I know Opera Theater of St. Louis has transformed some of their space in their building to digital studios. And I think what you're going to find is that there's always going to be a population of folks who, for whatever reason, find it really challenging to leave their home and attend a performance, who would love the option of, buying a ticket and viewing it virtually. So for us, I don't think we'll go back. I think, and anything pre-COVID probably doesn't remain. I think it's just, I do think it's a new way forward. And I know we work a lot with private funders who give us money to deploy these programs. And what we've heard from some significant funders of A&E is that they are really interested in organizations that are going to have some in-person performance and then some virtual performance. And so they're really looking for that innovation. And the one thing I know for sure, our arts community will deliver on that innovation just based on what we've seen over 2020. So for A&E, you know, it's vital that we continue to invest in the arts and what we like to call the creative economy for all the reasons that we know, and we just play a small role in that. But it has profoundly shifted in 2021. So I think, Megan, I think you'll have a job for a while.
I hope so. The next question, why are you passionate about accessibility?
I'll just speak briefly that arts organizations should be passionate about it because you know, we're always trying to build audience and build new audience and make things accessible for new audiences. So I think that would be the number one reason why.
I work in customer service, and I love working with people and servicing people in a sense. And I don't think you can really do that without including accessibility. So it's literally hand in hand. You know, if you're gonna service anybody, you have to make sure that if you're gonna meet those needs, that you understand what those needs are, but you're also willing to be open-minded, because not everyone has the same needs. So that's why I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, and I think for those of us in the arts, it's just a question of living up to what we say we believe in. You know, I think we all got into this because we recognize that art and stories and culture have this unique ability to bring us together and to connect us and to unite us around, you know, common threads of what it means to be a human being. And if unconsciously or just through like bad habits or just, you know, pre-existing structures, we're continuing to exclude people or just make it harder for people to be a part of that experience, then we're just not quite living that out. And I know we all want to. And so, and I have to say to the earlier question, I do think part of the like, part of the energy and the drive and the passion and the wherewithal to keep pushing this forward is probably going to wane a little bit as we do just sort of yearn to return to some kind of normalcy or pre-COVID-ness. So I do think, honestly, I think a moment like this where the work is held up and recognized and celebrated and encouraged, I think is going to help us all stay motivated and keep it front of mind so that we don't get lost in the old day-to-day that kept us from making it a priority before.
Yeah, I do think it's amazing the things that were quote unquote not possible before became possible very quickly in say March, when there wasn't a choice. So our next question, Joan, are you still with us? We lost Joan's video. I'll come back to that question specifically for Dance the Vote. But the next one, do any of your institutions have an advisory team of local St. Louis folks that have disabilities?
We do not.
We don't present, we're a funder, so we don't have that either. We have probably what comes closest to it is we have our Arts and Healing Initiative Advisory Council, and there are, you know, doctors, practitioners, a lot of folks on that committee.
Sarah Sims, who is the Director of Accessibility, does work with an advisory board, and I believe all of them have some type of disability. I've sat in on maybe a couple of those meetings, but we have done work with a group before in order to just kind of, and we've also actually have them, excuse me, walk through our exhibits here at the Missouri History Museum and at our Soldiers Memorial Museum downtown, just so they can kind of help us with accessibility features and let us know what is working and what is not working.
Yeah, that's so important. I feel like I say this in every ACAC and every time I've probably had a meeting with any of you, but nothing about us without us is so important. And for someone that is not in that category of having a disability, I will never know, I will not currently know what it's like to be listening to audio description as a person that's not sighted. So it's really important to have the feedback of someone that actually gets it, because I can tell you, I go to lots of trainings and every time there's, 10 people saying this is the way it should be. And then the one person that's blind in the room says that's not the way it should be. So those advisory councils are so important. So I encourage everyone to find a way to do that. The next question, representation matters. Where do you, as leaders in the arts and culture scene, see the most opportunity for growth?
I would say for A&E, it's something we've been working on in 2020 as we prepare for our 2021 funding season. We'll be announcing a new framework for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility that is going to be baked into all of our funding opportunities, and just to really help us identify those groups that we may not have funded before or that we just don't know about. So I think that's coming out in the next couple weeks. We've worked really hard on it, and it'll really be sort of the framework upon which all of our funding opportunities are based on. So just for us, just expanding that knowledge of who's working out there that we don't know about, and then eliminating some barriers, I think, that we've had in our grant opportunities that, it's sort of one of those things where it's always been there. And, now we recognize that some of the boundaries that we had are prohibiting us from funding in the community that we need to be funding in. So we'll be announcing that. Cynthia Davis and Jessa Ray Jenkins, our grants and program team, are doing some workshops where they're introducing it. So in the next couple weeks, you can get that information on our website, which is keeparthappening.org.
Great. I want to go back to, go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say that for the festival, at least, our biggest opportunity or at least biggest area of growth potential is when it comes to representation is in our staff. There's been a longstanding commitment and results of, of creating diverse artistic companies. And frankly, even on our board is more diverse than our full-time staff is. So that's one of the things that we've been talking about the most in terms of how we change that, because it's not small changes that are going to do the trick here. It's going to take real transformation. So at least for the festival, the most growth needs to happen around our full-time staff.
Joan, we have a question specifically for you. Are any of the dancers that have performed for Dance the Vote disabled or blind?
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, I want to apologize. In the moment that we're talking, that we're doing this ode to technology and how it's going to change all of our lives, I got kicked off. I'm sorry, friends and colleagues, and I missed probably a really good conversation. But that's good, because the technology is stuff that Megan and Mind's Eye recorded it, and then I'll hopefully be able to hear what you said afterwards. Yes, absolutely. First of all, as I said, disability has been part of our world in the theater for a very long time. And when we started Dance the Vote, we said that it would absolutely be essential. So you saw a photograph of Anna Jennings, who's a longtime member of the Disability Project, and she was a rapper. And in their very first performance that we did outside of Vintage Vinyl, and then also at the History Museum. But yes, we commissioned all these different dance companies and or choreographers, predominantly of color, and this summer. And two of the companies were disability specific. Okay, so Axis and also Heidi Lasky Dance. So absolutely, there were dancers who were involved who were disabled in many different ways, and including visual impairment. Yeah.
Great. That's a good place for me to put a plug also for, we have an event, Mind's Eye has an audio described dance class coming up with Vitality in Motion that will be audio described. It's going to be a 4-week, four half-hour sessions over 4 weeks, specifically for people who are blind or visually impaired with audio description. So we'd love to have you with us. That question was from Erica. We'd love to have you with us, Erica, for those dance classes. Those are all the questions I have in the Q&A. Is anybody, I don't see anybody with a raised hand, but please raise your hand. I see Joan's raised hand. Yes, go ahead, Joan.
So I apologize, I might have missed this part of the conversation, but in talking about advocacy and sort of changing the playing field, I feel that it's a two-way street. It is incumbent on cultural institutions and funders and foundations to be more aware of accessibility. And to me, when I talk about accessibility, I'm not only talking about quote disability, I'm also talking about language, and I'm also talking about racial diversity and gender diversity. But I also feel that those of us in the disability community need to advocate more for ourselves. And one of the most powerful images ever to me is the image of people who are disabled crawling up the Capitol steps to push for the Americans with Disabilities Act. And what can happen is that people can become so disenfranchised, or they can become so overwhelmed by their basic daily needs that they don't always advocate as much. So I am open to helping to organize and for us to think about a kind of an invitation that we could send out to a lot of different cultural organizations and institutions and funders, and saying, hey, can we think about these things? And you know, sometimes you have to be very vocal, vocal in a variety of ways. I'm thinking of the manifesto that was written last summer that was signed by thousands of people, that asked people to take a look at the racial practices in the contemporary theater. And it put a lot of people on edge, but it also opened up a lot of ways to think about things. And I kind of feel like the disability community needs to do that more than we do. Yeah, I think that we need to do that more than we do. So that's something that's on my mind. But that's not saying that we're letting other people off the hook. It's saying that social change comes from multiple directions at one time. But I see much more awareness now than when I started the Disability Project. The reason I started the Disability Project was because as a theater artist, you know, as a performer, as a writer, as a director, when I was going to the theater, I would never see people who are visibly disabled. And I'm one of these people who always asks who's not in the room. And that's why we started the Disability Project. And now we see more people with disabilities, but you know, the things have changed, and I'm hopeful that the technology, when it's working, does allow more access. But I think that we need to advocate. And I think that the moment is now to really be doing this advocating.
Yeah, agreed. I have a question specifically for Cynthia from Beatrice. This question is from Ms. Prost. Any grant opportunity to develop trainings related to cultural competency?
I'm not sure I understand what their meaning is about cultural competency. So could they sort of explain that? We have so many different grant opportunities, and we're actually getting ready to announce a few more new ones in the next couple weeks that depending on what I'm thinking the cultural competency definition might be, there might be something in that program. But if we could get a definition of cultural competency, then I could really respond to it better, I think.
Yeah, Beatrice, I can turn your microphone on if you wanna talk.
Oh, sure. Good morning.
Good morning, Beatrice.
Yeah, sorry. I was just kind of thinking generally. I'm part of a nonprofit organization, and we do provide cultural competency training to social services, medical, schools related stuff. And
yes,
there's just so much.
Beatrice, if you would email me, we can have a more in-depth conversation, and I can connect you with our grants team, because I think we might have some things if you're working in schools. We're really excited. We had to sort of pause our arts and education teachers program over 2020, but we're now getting ready to resume that with a new funder. So please, can she get my email, Megan? It's kind of long. I don't want to like say it over the
yeah, absolutely. I'll send it to you, Beatrice.
Send Beatrice my email, and Beatrice will connect today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm making myself a note.
I'll remind you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. Do any of the panelists have questions for each other or thoughts? Anything?
Congratulations, everybody. It's really thrilling to be in such great company. You know, we're not in this space to be acknowledged, but it's great when it happens. And like I said, it just made our year.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that it made your year. So maybe while people are thinking, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick to thank our sponsor. So hopefully you are seeing a screen that says thank you to our sponsors, which is Ameren, Illinois, for ACAC, and we're also a member agency of the United Way of Greater St. Louis Safety Net. And I also want to send a thank you to all of these great people who have been with us today, Jenna and Tori and Tom and Joan and Becky, who wasn't on screen, but thanks for helping us, Becky and Cynthia, and our ASL interpreters today, Hannah and David, and our CART interpreter, Annabelle, our audio describer, Sue, and Angela and Laura for helping me out on my end from Mind's Eye. And thanks to all of you for being here today. And I will send out a recording plus an email with resources. But I do want to give a last minute, if anybody else has anything that they want to say or share. I don't see any hands up. I don't have any questions in the QA box. We might get through an ACAC before the allotted time for the first time, I think, ever, not at 10:05 saying sorry. So if not, I think we will call it. And again, congratulations to all of you. And we hope to continue working with all of you in the future, and keep up the good work, and keep your mind open all year for who should win these awards and for 2021.
Thank you.
So
Thank
thanks,
you,
guys.
Megan. Congrats, everybody.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.